I used to work with this old guy named Jim at Walmart a few years back. I absolutely hated working there, but it was my first job. The work wasn't necessarily the worst, it was mostly a few of my coworkers that made being there suck so bad. To give you a better picture of Jim, he was like 6'3", borderline anorexic. His head was half bald and he was an ex-crackhead. He was in his mid-40s, but he looked to be almost 60. Pretty much everyone disliked him at work because he was always raging and acting like a psycho. His vibe was always off from day one to me. But despite this, I was always nice to him anyways, but I would keep it short when he would talk to me. He never seemed to get the hint that I wasn't interested. A little bit before I quit, there was a rumor going around that he was a pedophile. I was only 17, so of course that made me stray away from him even further. On the last night that I worked there, before I quit, it was around 9:30 at night. I wasn't good to leave until 10 o'clock though, so I had to find a way to keep busy. Jim was there as well that night, and he was acting rather unusual, even more unusual than he normally would. I don't know much about him other than what I told you. All I knew is that he gave me the creeps. I don't know why he always acted so angry, but it seemed like everything would overwhelm him and he would have these temper tantrums where he would have a fit of rage. This happened almost every single night that I worked with him, which was thankfully not very often because he usually worked nights, and since I had school, I was usually on morning shift. I would cover shifts for a couple of my work buddies though when they would need it sometimes, so that's why I was working late that night. I was sweeping up in the back and that was when James came up to me from behind and he grabbed my arm. "Dude, what the hell?" I said as I turned around. It startled me as I had my headphones in and I just wasn't expecting someone to grab my arm like that so randomly. Before I could even say anything else, he laughed and apologized. He grabbed a joint out of his pocket and he asked if I wanted to smoke it with him. I told him to go away and that I wasn't interested. He continued trying, but eventually I raised my voice a little bit and I told him that I didn't smoke weed and that I was a minor, and if he didn't leave me alone, I was going to tell the manager. When I told him I was underage, he gave me this big creepy smile, almost like he was turned on by it or something, and it made me feel sick. Thankfully, he eventually backed off and he walked away. I finished up with my work and then I headed outside because my dad was my ride and he was already out there waiting for me in the parking lot. Of course, Jim was standing out there in the front just smoking weed. He was literally smoking a joint right out in the open. No one seemed to care though. Honestly, I didn't even care either. I was just annoyed because I didn't want to see him. I walked past him and after I made a few steps forward towards my dad. "Hey sweetie, are you sure you don't want to hit this before you go? The offer's still on the table." Luckily, I didn't even have to do anything because my dad was there and he witnessed the whole thing. My dad stepped out of his car and he told him to back off and he asked him what his issue was. Jim got a little bit mouthy with my dad, but you could tell he didn't want a problem with him. He couldn't pick on someone his own size. I can't help but wonder why he wanted me to smoke it so bad. I feel like he was trying to take advantage of me or something, but I don't know. I really don't know what to make of it all, but you can't deny how creepy he is, and the fact that he wouldn't leave me alone is just weird, plain and simple. Maybe it wouldn't be as bad if I wasn't 17 at the time and he wasn't so damn creepy in the first place. Anyways, I literally quit working there and I didn't show up for my next shift in the morning. I told my boss about what happened and he didn't blame me. I think Jim may have gotten fired. I probably could have continued working there, but I wasn't very comfortable with it after what happened. And besides, I don't think my dad would have let me anyways. He's extremely protective of me. It was just another normal day of work for me. At the time I was working at my local Walmart and it obviously wasn't the greatest. Luckily I had a few good friends from school that worked there with me and it felt like the time would go by much faster with them there. So at least I had that to look forward to most days. One night when I was working an overnight shift, there was this older man that I kept seeing. He had been in the store for like an hour and he didn't have a cart, nor did he have anything in his hands either. It was a little unusual, but I couldn't really do anything about it since he wasn't technically doing anything wrong or illegal. Anyways, more on that in a minute. This was back when Walmart was open 24/7 before COVID. I actually didn't mind working that late. I was a night owl and it was super easy working that late at night. All I really had to do was make sure things were cleaned up, some stocking, and really that was it. Apart from a couple other small duties that I had from time to time, working there was a breeze. Back to that guy I was just talking about a second ago. I had seen him at least 5 times in the span of an hour, and he seemed to be just walking around the store aimlessly. The next time I saw him, I decided to stop him and ask if he needed help finding anything, and that I noticed he had been here a while. He just stood there and stared at me like a weirdo, and he didn't say anything. All of a sudden, he took off running the other way, all while looking back at me here and there like he was paranoid about something. That was seriously one of the weirdest things that has ever happened to me in my life. I could not for the life of me figure out what the hell that was all about. Anyways, I didn't see him for like another hour, and at one point I kind of figured that he left the store. But man, was I wrong. Because the next time I saw him, he had this red substance all over his shirt that looked like blood. My mind obviously jumped to a conclusion that something was wrong, but at the same time, something inside of me thought that it was some sort of sick prank. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning, by the way, and there were only 2 other workers in the whole entire store with me, and I hadn't seen another customer for over 30 minutes. It was isolating, and the amount of fear I was feeling in that exact moment was intense. I suppose I could have just ran, but something in me was so uncomfortable that I stood there frozen in fear. He was now just standing still, making piercing eye contact with me. I eventually snapped out of it, and I began walking backwards, and after a few seconds, I turned all the way around to try and find help. I honestly thought he was going to be chasing me, but when I turned around, he was gone. I found one of my coworkers and we called the police. It took like 20 minutes to show up, of course, and the worst part is, the guy was still in the store. We ran to the back and locked ourselves in one of our manager's offices, and we stared at the security cameras. He was just walking around alone and probably looking for me or someone else to scare. Eventually, the police arrested him, and what they found was unbelievable. All of the blood that was on him was no prop at all. It turns out, in fact, that he didn't hurt anyone other than himself. Apparently, he had stabbed himself multiple times with a small pocket knife in the Walmart bathroom. There was blood everywhere, and he dragged a trail of it all around the store, and it sent me into so much anxiety that my boss sent me home early. I'm sure the man was sent to a psych ward to get evaluated after the hospital, and hopefully prison if necessary. Could you imagine if I would have pissed him off or something? He probably would have tried attacking me. I'm sure the only reason he didn't was because I was so patient with him. People like that are extremely unpredictable. I'm just glad I lived to tell the story. I'm 26 years old, and I used to work at Walmart part-time a few years back from the age of 17 to 21. For some background, I'm a small girl, and this Walmart is sort of in the middle of nowhere. It was only 10 minutes away from my house or so, but the store was located right off the highway, and there were no other nearby stores for maybe a half mile. Not exactly the middle of nowhere, but definitely creepy, especially at night. If you were to walk outside the store, you wouldn't be able to see anything other than the parking lot and the highway. But at night, there was a certain eeriness in the air. Especially every night when I would have to walk to my car after my shift was over. I worked from 3 p.m. to 10 o'clock most nights, so it was obviously dark by the time I got out. Usually it was very quiet at this time. However, I've encountered some really weird situations and I ran into some freaky people, but this woman takes the cake by far. I don't remember the exact time, but it was closer to the end of my shift, maybe around 8:30 if I had to guess. I had to use the bathroom, so I made my way over to the back of the store and I went in and did my business. No need to talk about that too much. I was just finishing up in the stall when I heard someone walk in the bathroom. I literally thought nothing of it at all until the very moment that I realized that the woman in the bathroom with me was crazy. Her footsteps moved closer and closer until eventually she was standing right in front of my stall door. My door was the only one that was closed, so she had to have known that it was occupied. Plus the other doors were wide open, so I had no clue what she was trying to do. All I could hear was her breathing before me. I started to feel a little weird, so I said to her, "Hey, someone's in here." Still though, she didn't say anything. A few seconds later, she walked into the stall directly next to mine and began making these really weird noises, almost like some sort of demon. I don't know how to explain it, but it was extremely uncomforting. I was honestly too nervous to even get up and leave the stall right in that moment because I was worried of what lied ahead of me. I really wish I would have just booked it out of the stall though, like really, because maybe I wouldn't have had to have gone through what I went through. Just want to warn you now that some of what you're about to hear is extremely graphic and absolutely downright disturbing, so you can't say you haven't been warned. I looked over at her feet in the stall and I saw that they were pointing at me, meaning she was definitely looking in my direction. For whatever reason that was, I had no clue. All of a sudden, she got on her knees and looked under the stall directly at me. She had this cold and disconnected look on her face, then she smiled at me. She had these huge yellow teeth, and a few of them were even missing. I screamed almost immediately and I told her to get the heck out. No joke, that was when she took out some pepper spray and tried to spray me with it. Thankfully she missed my eyes, but some of it got on my face. I then started kicking her in the head and I ran like hell out of there. What in the actual hell is wrong with people, I thought. I was so freaked out that I didn't even bother telling an employee and I just ran to my car. I didn't call the police either because I figured she was probably already gone by now, and plus I thought that me kicking her was enough punishment. Honestly, I was scared that I was going to get in trouble for kicking her too. Even though it was self-defense kind of, I was just worried that the police wouldn't see it that way considering she was quite a bit older. Anyways, after that, I've had some weird nightmares about her over the years where I was in that same stall, and I've had just about every possible scenario happen it seems like. In one of my dreams, she physically attacked me and somehow managed to sexually abuse me. I don't want to get into this part too much, as it's a lot for me to talk about, but even now, every now and then, I still get the occasional reminder of it all in a dream, or should I say nightmare.